So there's one tip I always give to job seekers is you got to take it into your own hands and you got to do something to differentiate yourself. What else I believe is really important is to have an optimized LinkedIn profile.
Before we start the show, I have a quick question for you. Is your resume stuck in the rejection pile? At Resume Assassin, I create powerful resumes that showcase your skills, experience, and achievements, getting you noticed by recruiters. I'll also optimize your LinkedIn profile, transforming it into a magnet for opportunity. Visit resumeassassin.com today and take charge of your job search. Visit resumeassassin.com. Melissa Grabiner, welcome to Recruiting Insider.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So today I'm actually so excited to have an exceptional guest with us. So Melissa is a top 1% job seeker coach on TopMate. She's the #1 HR LinkedIn creator in the USA and a top female LinkedIn creator worldwide with nearly 400,000 followers. Known for her daily posts filled with job search advice, HR and talent acquisition wisdom, and really some truly heartfelt inspiration. You definitely need to give her a follow on LinkedIn. You won't regret it. She has a ton of experience as a global HR and talent acquisition leader, as well as being a certified yoga instructor and a savvy business advisor as well. So today we're going to dig into a topic that everyone out there is dying to know more about, I think. What the heck can we do right now to increase our chances of finding a job? But yeah, before we really dig into the topic, Melissa, I know I just mentioned a few, surface level things about you, but could you share just a little bit more about your journey that led you to become a top job seeker coach and what experiences really shaped your approach to job searching?
Yeah, thank you for that very kind introduction. So I'm based in Chicago, born and raised, and so my entire career has been in HR and talent acquisition. So I was with a company called Takeda Pharmaceuticals, one of the top pharmaceutical companies in the world. I was there for 18 years and spent the first couple of years in a senior HR business capacity. And then I transferred into talent acquisition. And when I left the company, I was the global TA director for the company's largest business unit. At one time, I had a team of up to 22 direct reports, and we hired about 50% of all hires globally for the company, which was about 3,000 employees a year. I was laid off from that company. They moved my position to Boston. And at the time, my sons were in high school and I wasn't looking to make a move. So I ended up working very quickly thereafter at a company called Wolters Kluwer for 9 months. I was a recruiting consultant, and then they promoted me after 9 months to a global director of TA. So that was like quite a few steps up in a very short period of time. And the company was based out of New York, and they wanted to move me there. And I said, I'm not moving to New York. So I ended up leaving. So then I went to a company called Christine Matthews Consulting, which is part of One Digital. And I spent about 3.5 years there, just doing HR consulting, talent acquisition consulting for a bunch of different companies, mostly in the biotechnology space. A lot of them were in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I recently started my own company helping job seekers. And what was happening was so many people were reaching out to me on LinkedIn, asking me if I could help them with their resumes, their LinkedIn profiles, interview prep, job search strategies. And I thought to myself, I might have a small business here, and I've always wanted to be a small business owner. And I felt like all the stars were aligned. And I started this company, and it's been super fun. I've had about 150 clients in a very short period of time. I've had a perfect rating from every one of my clients, which to me is the most satisfying piece because when I work with my clients, it's really important to me that they walk away saying, Melissa added a ton of value and it was really worth my time. So really, I just help job seekers. Regarding LinkedIn, it somehow took on a life of its own. So I was always on LinkedIn very sporadically. I never really took it seriously. And then about maybe 9 months ago, I thought, this is such a fun platform. And I'm going to post about job seeker tips, like things that you were saying earlier, tips, tools, motivation. And then all of a sudden what was happening is some of my posts went like crazy viral. And so my number of followers kept increasing and increasing. There was 1 month I gained 10,000 followers, like in a month, a little over
Wow.
10K. And it took on a life of its own. And it's just been a really, really fun journey. And through LinkedIn, I've been able to really scale my business. I've been on a ton of podcasts, LinkedIn live events. Have become a business advisor to 3 startup companies where the CEOs reached out to me on LinkedIn asking me to be an advisor. And it's been a really fun journey. And so I also coach people on how to elevate their presence on LinkedIn. And the one thing I say to all of my clients is it doesn't happen overnight. You have to be committed. It's time consuming. I probably spend 6 hours a day throughout the day on LinkedIn every single day. And it doesn't happen overnight. You don't wake up one day and have, 400,000 followers. So you have to be committed, and the rewards are so worth it. I've met incredible people. I have friends from all over the world just from people I met on LinkedIn. So truly this platform has changed my life. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. And, and thank you for sharing that. And I can definitely relate to that because, I also believe that LinkedIn is such a powerful platform. And you say that you spend 6 hours a day on there. And I too, I live on LinkedIn. I'm working, but I have LinkedIn pulled up
Yes.
almost all the time. And it's so powerful, both from, a perspective of business, but also from a job seeking perspective. So before we kind of dig into the topic, I'm actually curious to ask you, since you did really quickly grow your following, is there some sort of an algorithm hack that you kind of tapped into to get some
No.
of those viral posts? What
No.
content were you posting?
Yeah, I read a lot about the algorithm, not because I do my homework on it, but because I see people post about it. The algorithm is changing all of the time, right? And I don't ever worry about the algorithm. I have some posts that go crazy viral. I have other posts that don't do as well. I don't worry about that. I don't dwell on that. As long as my posts are educating people at a smaller scale versus a larger scale, I'm okay with that. I think a lot of creators on LinkedIn become obsessed about how quickly can I grow my followers and how many reactions did I get to this post and how many comments and how many shares. I don't worry about that. I think it's wasted time. The algorithm, from what I understand, is changing all the time, and no one really knows. No one really figures out. So I was like, I'm not going to worry about the algorithm because it's out of my control. What I can do is continue to hopefully provide value to my followers. That's my focus when I work on LinkedIn.
100%. And that's why you're so successful. And I mean, honestly, I've spoken with a lot of influencers on LinkedIn that have built like 500,000 followers, but they don't have a business. They're not able to, get clients and monetize those followers. And I've also spoken with people that have 4,000 followers, and they're crushing it because the value that they're adding to their clients is so great.
Right, right. Yeah. The other thing I started doing maybe about 7 months ago was companies were starting to reach out to me for brand partnerships.
Sure.
And I never really, I used to see posts of people posting about a particular company, but I never really thought much about it. And then all of a sudden, like January, February of last year, these companies were contacting me and saying, I really love your content. Do you want to partner in like a partnership? In other words, like you'll
Yeah.
post about my company and then we'll pay you for that post. And so, there are a lot of companies that I actually turn down. They
Hmm.
have to be in my wheelhouse, and it has to be authentic to my audience. So here's an example. Fintech companies. A lot of fintech companies reach out and say, I want to partner with you. And I'm very gracious to every company that wants to work with me. My followers aren't in fintech predominantly, right? My usage of LinkedIn is to help the job seeker. It's to give tips, tools, and motivation to job seekers. And I never want my followers to say, why is Melissa posting about fintech? She's never posted about it
Yeah.
before. She doesn't have a fintech background. So the authenticity is very important to me. So I only partner with companies where I think it's going to add value to my followers and where I feel like it's going to add value to my partners. If it doesn't align in those ways, I typically just turn down those partnerships. Always grateful though. Always grateful for companies that want to work with me.
Yeah, 100%. I would imagine that your followers appreciate that too, because if you start creating these posts that just don't make sense and don't resonate for them, they're going to sense that right away. So that authenticity and, turning down maybe even some, money that's offered with some of those brand partnerships is huge when it comes to maintaining the integrity of your profile as well.
Yeah, integrity is everything for me.
Exactly. Yeah.
I have spent a lot of time building up my reputation on LinkedIn and building up my followers. And if my followers start to think I'm not authentic, that is an issue for me.
Yeah. Yep. Sure. Yeah. So kind of like that was a little bit of a, a tangent from the topic, but I just, I find it so interesting. So kind of to, reel it back in, I want to start a little bit high level and ask you, what are the top 3 tips that you would give job seekers today to increase their chances of finding a job in the market?
Yes. So I have been in recruiting for many, many years. And outside of COVID, when the world virtually shut down, I have never seen a job market this challenging, this tough, and this competitive. I have job seekers reaching out to me daily on LinkedIn from all over the world, telling me their horror stories, their ghosting stories, not understanding why they submit 100 applications and are not getting a call back. I want to tell you quickly about how I found my prior job at One Digital. And I think this is a really important piece of information that hopefully will help job seekers. When I was laid off from the previous company, I wanted to be very strategic in my approach. I am not a big fan of let's apply to every job I see posted on LinkedIn, and then I'm going to refresh my browser twice a day to see new jobs pop up, and I'm going to apply. I wanted to be strategic about it. And so what I did was I literally took out a piece of paper and wrote down 17, 20 companies that I was interested in working at. That was always like in the back of my mind. And I thought, I'm going to go directly to the CEO or the CHRO, depending on the size of the company. One of the companies that I was interested in, it was a company called Christine Matthews Consulting, where she owned a very small consulting business with talent acquisition professionals and HR professionals. And I reached out to her, and there wasn't a job posting. I had no idea if the company was even hiring. And I said, my blurb was something along the lines of, I've been interested in your company for a while. Here's a copy of my resume. Here's why I feel I would add a lot of value. And I thought one of two things is going to happen. She's either going to get back to me or she's not. And if she doesn't get back to me, at least I know I tried. Well, she did get back to me. And she's like, I'm so glad you reached out. We are actually looking to build up our organization. Why don't you and I have a conversation? Long story short, 2 weeks later, I had a job offer in hand. And I
Oh,
was at that company for 3.5 years.
wow.
Always coach my clients is if you're looking for a job, you are not going to have a lot of luck if you simply post for a position or apply for a position and cross your fingers and sit back and hope that the company's going to call you. You have to do things that are going to differentiate you. What I suggest to my clients is if you see a position that is posted, don't just post again and wait for something to happen. Reach out to someone directly on LinkedIn, really depending on the position, depending on the size of the company, will really depend who you reach out to. If I have a client who's in finance, let's say this person is looking to he applies to a director of finance position. What I say is, let's go on LinkedIn. We're going to do a search and find people that work at the company at a very high level in the finance function. And together we go through it and I say, okay, this person's a VP of finance. So there's a very high chance that this person would be your boss should you, have this job. Reach out directly to this person. And then I help them craft the messages.
Yeah.
So it's not enough, again, just to post and pray. I call it like
Yeah.
post or apply and pray.
Yeah.
Reach out to people directly after you do so, or do what I did. And even if you don't see a job posting, but you have a list of target companies, reach out to those companies. If you're interested in working at Amazon, you're not going to reach out to Jeff Bezos because that doesn't make any sense. But like the smaller the company, to me, it's okay. Reach out to the CEO, reach out to someone who you think is the decision maker for this particular position. So it really depends on the size of the company. So there's one tip I always give to job seekers is you got to take it into your own hands and you got to do something to differentiate yourself. What else I believe is really important is to have an optimized LinkedIn profile. So many of my clients that I work with call me because their LinkedIn presence is virtually bare. They don't have a picture. They don't have an about section optimized. Their banner is like the standard default LinkedIn banner. So I work with them and let's beef up, let's optimize your profile because that's almost like your electronic resume. And listen, I've been a recruiter for 20 years. I'm always looking at people's profiles. So I think if someone's in a job search, it's important to make sure that you not only is your LinkedIn profile optimized, but it's always being updated. If you have a new experience at your company, put it on your profile. If you've gained new skills, put it on your profile because you never know when a company's going to reach out to you because they're interested in you for a potential opportunity. And the other thing I would say is network, and network some more. I read a statistic recently that said only 8% of job seekers actually find a position by applying to a job directly. When I left that company after 18 years, I found my next company by someone in my network. There was a recruiting consultant that worked on my team years ago. I called him up and I said, "Hey, I'm looking for a new job." And he said, "We're actually hiring contract recruiters. Would you be interested?" Gave him my resume. And then I ended up getting an offer. Networking is so important. And the thing about networking, I think that a lot of people get wrong, is networking isn't only about what someone can do for you, but it's what you can do for that person. It's a reciprocal two-way relationship. I think there are too many people that think, or they're shy to network and they're like, well, I'm a little bit shy and I'm not comfortable reaching out to people on LinkedIn. And I say, statistically speaking, more people find their job through their network versus simply applying to a position. So it's not only networking strategically, but it's the ongoing network. You don't want to network once you lose your job. You want to always be networking. So by the time, if you do lose your job, you're already going to have that broad network already built for you.
Yeah, and I love those. And I think that those 3 tips are amazing. And I kind of want to dig into all 3 of those just a little bit more because, I love the first thing that you said about doing something to differentiate yourself, especially in a market like it is today. And when I think about my own clients, and I write resumes and LinkedIn profiles for clients as well. And, when I would write a resume, when I think back to a year ago, I would write a resume and many of my clients would have a same day interview or a same week interview. Well, now, the reason that they were having quick success, of course, a well-written resume and LinkedIn profile is a huge part of it, but it's also the competition, right? They were going up against 25 to 50 candidates maybe. Well, now when you apply, some companies are receiving 500 to 1,000 applicants in the very first day. So, like you said, Melissa, you can't just apply to a position and, sit back and, pray that you're going to hear something. You need to kind of take it into your own hands to differentiate yourself. So I love what you said about, reaching out to, maybe somebody within the company, whether, if it's a small company, if it's the CEO, the owner of the company, or maybe it's somebody that looks like they might be your potential boss. Reaching out to those people on LinkedIn can be so darn worth your time. And so my question for you then is, what are the best ways to actually reach out to those decision makers?
Yeah. So what I help my clients with is first I show them how to find who those decision makers are on LinkedIn. So what I always say is go to the company page, click on people, and then in the search bar, click on, so if someone's interested in a finance director position, go in the search bar and click, type in finance. And then all the people that have finance on their profiles within that company are going to show up. And you want to reach out to people that are like higher up in the organization. So you don't want to reach out to like a finance coordinator. You want to reach out to a director or senior director, VP, maybe even like, the very chief, finance person. So it's targeting the right people and doing it quickly. I could tell you myself, if I was looking for a job and I saw a job posting with 1,000 applicants, I wouldn't even apply. That's just my personal opinion. Even if I saw 500 applicants, I wouldn't apply. You have to be smart with your applications. Not every recruiter is going to read every resume that goes through the applicant tracking system, especially if there's hundreds and hundreds of applicants. The other thing I would say is go on LinkedIn and see if you know someone who works at the company. And if you know someone who works at the company, even if you don't, maybe they're just a connection, but you've never talked to them, or maybe there's someone who you follow or they follow you, still reach out to them. I think that people want to help, right? People reach out to me all the time on LinkedIn, and I'm always helping everyone when I can because I feel like we're kind of all in this together. Always see if you know someone at the company or if you have a connection that knows someone at the company, right? That's another very strategic and smart way to go about your job search. Again, applying blindly for the most part statistically isn't really going to do anything for you.
Yeah. So what are some good outreach strategies that you've, I guess, from a communication, like the actual message that your clients are sending, have you found a message that actually works well pretty consistently?
Yeah. Look, when I reached out to the CEO of my company, it was a very short message. It was something along the lines of, hi, my name is Melissa Grabiner. I have been following your company for a long time. I'm very interested in the work that you do. And along the lines of a small blurb about myself, I've been in talent acquisition for 20 years. I worked at Takeda Pharmaceuticals, which is, a life sciences pharmaceutical company, which is your company is working with those types of organizations. So a small couple sentences about what I do. And then I attached a copy of my resume. So it was, you don't want to make the message super, super long. You want to start it by saying, that you're interested, why you're interested, and why you feel you would be a good fit. So I listed like a couple of bullet points, very high level about my experience. And like I said earlier, one of two things was going to happen. She'd get back to me or she wouldn't. And if she
Hmm.
didn't, at least I know I tried, but she did. And one thing I always tell job seekers too, and I post about this often on LinkedIn, you only need one job. You only need that one good job. You need 10 jobs. So when you wake up one day and you're feeling deflated or you're like, I just can't face the day anymore, because job searching is emotional. You have good days, you have bad days, you have ups and downs. I've been a job seeker twice in the last 5 years, so I absolutely know what it's like for people looking for a job. And that's why I have so much empathy and sympathy for them and why my heart goes out to them. But it's okay to take days off from your job search. If you're feeling, your mental health is suffering, your physical health, take a break. Job searching can be like having a full-time job, but you have to take care of yourself and realize that rejection is part of the process. I mean, I was rejected many times. If a company is only hiring one person and 500 people apply, 499 people are going to be rejected. And to me, as cliche as this sounds, to me, rejection means redirection. It's not meant for you. If you get rejected, it simply means that perhaps it wasn't the right opportunity at the right time, but you only need one yes, and to not beat yourself down. You show yourself grace, show yourself compassion, and realize that you're doing your best every day. And again, if some days you wake up and your heart isn't in it, take a break. Mental health can definitely suffer. I post about this often too. Mental health, and I actually have people reach out to me on LinkedIn all the time saying, my mental health has completely been beaten down by this job search. I've been going at it for 6 months. My bills are starting to pile up. My unemployment insurance has run out. I don't know what else to do. My heart breaks for these people because I know what they're going through. And what I always say to them is, every day is a new day, new possibilities. Keep moving forward. And it's not a matter of if you're going to get a job, it's a matter of when you're going to get a job. So you just got to keep positive, keep the faith, and show yourself some grace and compassion.
Yeah, I totally agree. I have a very similar perspective when it comes to rejection and job seeking, and it can take an emotional toll. And I think that, many of us have seen that. We've experienced it ourselves. We've seen it in family. We've seen it in friends. We've seen it all over LinkedIn, where it's like, you're job searching and you're getting all of these rejections, and it can take that emotional toll. So, I love that redirection of thinking of those rejections, maybe even positively, because it shows that you're being proactive. You're taking the steps that you need to, apply to these positions. You're getting rejected. Okay, that's a redirection. Like you said, let's move on. That this isn't meant to be. Let's pursue something else. And so I'm also curious, kind of going back to the outreach when you're looking at a company. Let's say that you really want to get in with Amazon, and you reach out to the CFO within the department that you're targeting, but you don't get a response back. And not to push on this too much, but I'm curious, and I think that a lot of our job seekers that are listening to this would be curious as well. Is it okay then to maybe reach out to the VP of finance and see if you can get somebody else to respond? And, what's the line there?
100%. Not everybody is active on LinkedIn, and there are a lot of executives that hire people to manage their LinkedIn page. So, absolutely. I mean, when I was looking for a job and I was doing my proactive outreach, there were plenty of people that didn't get back to me, either for they didn't want to, they weren't interested in me, or they simply didn't see my message. Because again, there are so many people that have a LinkedIn presence and they have a LinkedIn page, but they don't necessarily have active activity on that page. So yes, if you reach out to someone and you don't hear back, reach out to someone else. And what I always suggest to my clients is, if you are interested in a company, reach out to a recruiter, a high up recruiter, right? You don't want to reach out to necessarily like a recruiting coordinator. You want to reach out to like the VP of talent acquisition or someone a little bit higher up in the organization. And it's also okay to reach out to someone who you think could be your boss in that department. A lot of it is just a numbers game, hoping that something will stick. But the way I look at it is that if you don't try, you're never going to know. I am such a good example of, when you're proactive in your job search, amazing things can happen.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, so let's, go down to LinkedIn, because I know that was the second tip that you mentioned. And I mean, we all know by now that, LinkedIn literally has billions of users,
It
and
does.
it's the number one recruiting platform that's on the market. I mean, you're in talent acquisition yourself, and I've had conversations with hundreds, if not thousands, of TA and, recruiters, TA professionals and recruiters. And every single person that I've spoken with has said that LinkedIn is, either the main platform that they recruit on, or if not the only platform that they recruit on at this point. So, I'm curious, and we already kind of talked about how you've built that massive following on LinkedIn, but what are some of your tips for, effectively using LinkedIn to enhance job search opportunities?
Yeah. So I would say just take a tiny step back. If it's okay, like I
Hmm.
want to explain like how I was able to grow my
Yeah, I would
followers
love that. Yep.
to the point where I did. So, again, as I said earlier, it takes time. You're not going to wake up one day and have 400 plus thousand followers. For me, I think the reason why my followers have gained so much traction and why I have such loyal followers is because I post about things that I'm not an expert in talent acquisition, but being my career, I feel like I have a good amount of knowledge. So it's almost like finding your niche, posting about your niche, and adding value to your audience. When I post on LinkedIn and people reply to my posts and they comment, 90% of the people will hear a reply back from me. I'm not a big fan of let me post something and people can write their comments and I'm just kind of going to walk away. I engage very, very deeply with my audience. I also spend a lot of time commenting on other people's posts. So it's not simply me posting every day and seeing how many reactions I get and how many comments I get. I spend the majority of my time on LinkedIn simply replying to other people's posts. There's a couple of groups I'm a part of on LinkedIn, like the Emotional Intelligence Network, the Leadership Tank. There's some HR groups. I do post to those groups often as well. Those posts seem to do very well, but I think a lot of it is simply engaging in a healthy way. What I'm starting to see on LinkedIn, which is really a shame, I see people fighting on LinkedIn. I mean, I'm starting to see people post about something and someone will comment and they'll completely disagree. And then you see all this back and forth.
Hmm.
And I'm like, you know what? It's not professional. It's not worth your time and energy. Stop fighting with people on LinkedIn. That is a surefire way to get a negative reputation out there and for people that are going to stop following you. But again, it's taking the time in the platform, adding value, posting about things that you feel you're very knowledgeable about. And motivation. People need motivation, right? And so I post a lot of motivational things. Number one, because I truly feel like I just love being motivational for people. But I also think in this time, in this day and age, with so many people looking for jobs, even that little bit of motivation, if that gives them a little pep in their step,
Yeah.
then my post is worth it. And if my post makes even one person feel better, then I'm glad I did it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. And I've seen that too on LinkedIn lately, and it baffles me where people come in and they start saying something super negative on somebody's post. Whether if you disagree with the post, just let it pass by.
I
Don't say
agree.
anything because what that's doing, in my perspective is it's building part of your personal brand. And you don't want part of your personal brand to be that person that goes on other people's posts and starts saying super negative things because employers are going to see that. People that you're potentially going to work with, potential clients
You're,
are going to see that. You don't want to
yeah.
put that on you. So
I
I
once
yeah.
Sorry, I was just
No,
gonna
go
say,
ahead. Yeah.
a couple months ago, I did a post and someone wrote like this scathing comment.
Yeah.
So it was so ridiculous. So I was like, I'm gonna go look on his page. And so
Hmm.
I went on his page and I read, you can click on comments and see the comments that people have.
Hmm.
This guy literally spends his days bashing people. So I was like just one of hundreds of negative comments. And then I think to myself, like, this is so ridiculous. I blocked him because I'm like, I don't have time and energy for people that are negative. I don't want that in my space. I want only positivity. So to me, like, especially if you're looking for a job, you have to be professional. Companies will look on your LinkedIn profile. When people apply to my roles for my clients and we're going to interview someone, I look on their profile. What are they posting about? Are they being negative? Are they being rude? Like, I don't want those people. And I'm starting to see more and more of that on LinkedIn.
I wonder if it's the same guy. I had a guy come on and say something super negative and I was bad and kind of, I was trying to be super positive and I responded to him a couple times and then I just stopped and then I didn't even go on his profile, but I've noticed his comments on a couple of other people's posts and they were all super negative. And I was like, this guy is just going everywhere and posting all of these negative things and it makes you feel icky. So don't
I
be
know.
that person.
Yeah. And that's what I say to my clients that I coach who are looking to build their personal brand and to build their presence on LinkedIn is always be positive. If you, it's almost like if you have nothing, like I used to say to my sons, if you have nothing nice to say, just don't say it. I think that's the same can
Yep.
apply for LinkedIn.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, and since we are on the topic of LinkedIn, I do want to kind of dig into networking a little bit because I know that you mentioned that as well. As point number 3, network, network, network. Always be networking. And I'm seeing that everywhere right now, and I totally agree with it. And I always think of the ABCs of sale or of sales, always be closing. I'm like, ABN, always be networking.
Yeah.
Because even if you're happily employed, even if you've been at the same company for 15 years, for 20 years, if there's one thing that we've learned over the last year, it's that your job, it doesn't necessarily mean that your job is safe, even if you've been somewhere for so long. And I've worked with a lot of clients who they came to me and they were like, I don't know what to do. I was planning on retiring at this company. I loved my job. I had no intention of leaving. And, I've had people tell me their employers came in. One guy, it was like one day before his 17th work anniversary, they came in and told him that he was let go from his position. So, talk to us a little bit more about networking. How important is it in today's job market, and what strategies do you recommend, for really building a meaningful network?
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually posted about this yesterday on LinkedIn, how we should always be networking. And because what happens with me a lot, and I'm sure it's the same thing with you, a lot of my clients contact me because they're panicking, right? They're in a complete panic mode. They were at their company for a long time. They were a top performer. They were looking to retire from that company. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, they get laid off and their world becomes like a tailspin. And then they call me panicking, like, I don't have a resume. I don't have an optimized LinkedIn profile. And I feel like it's never a good situation to have to deal with that. And so I always say to people, and here's the other thing too, is that you never know when like your dream job is going to fall into your lap. And that's the other reason why you should always have an optimized LinkedIn profile and why you should always be networking. But I think with networking, and again, what so many people get wrong about it is a lot of people think it's like a one-sided kind of relationship. It's not. It's when I reach out to people to network, I always say to them, what can I do for you? Is there anyone in my network that I can introduce you to? Is there anyone, I don't know, that you see on my profile that, again, you want an introduction? Networking always has to be a two-way street, and you never want to network when you're in a panic situation. Always be networking. And what I would say too is that in the back of your mind, if you have a list of target companies that one day you might be interested in, find people on LinkedIn who will do the job that you do. So like if you're an HR manager and you are interested in working at Nike as an HR manager, find who those people are, send them a message on LinkedIn, strike up a conversation, and maybe even have a call. Maybe have a call to say, I really like your background. I think we can learn a lot from each other. Would you be open to having like a 30-minute networking call? Because I think a lot of people don't realize too is that everybody has a network, right? So like you, Mary, have a network. So perhaps there's someone in your network that works at a company that I would be interested in. That's the other reason why it's important to have a big network, is because everyone in your network, it kind of like continues to spider out and spider out. Everybody has a network. And even if they're like 2 degrees of separation from you or 3 degrees of separation, that one person could be the difference of you landing an interview and you not landing an interview. So in addition for me to me posting on LinkedIn, I'm always looking for new people to connect with. So I have a lot of followers, but to me, the follower count isn't as important as is the people that I've met along the way, right? My network is my net worth, right? I always say your network is your net worth. The other reason why it's important to network is because there's such thing as what I call the hidden job market. And I'm sure you know this as well. Perfect example is what happened to me. The company I worked at, One Digital, there wasn't a job posting. I had no clue if the company was hiring, and they were hiring. They just didn't post it on LinkedIn. So like if I didn't reach out to that CEO, I never would have had the job that I had, because there is such a thing as a hidden job market. And so networking is really important because people in your network might be aware of opportunities that aren't posted online. Those people could perhaps help you get in front of the right decision makers.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about my own experience too recently, because I've been working really hard on growing my network. And something that's been really helpful for me is, like you said, Melissa, it's, setting up those 15-minute coffee chats with someone, or, not just trying to build a huge network, but actually reaching out and starting a conversation with those people that you're connecting with.
Yes.
And, what I found is, people are then inviting me to LinkedIn Lives, or they're like, hey, I know this person that is, doing XYZ. Maybe you could come in and be a speaker on, talk about resume writing. I recently went on the Silicon Valley Toastmasters, and I was a guest speaker there. And it was because I'm networking, but I'm not just connecting with these people. I'm reaching out and I'm asking them, I'm starting a conversation. What projects are you working on? And really reaching in and tapping into how I can support them too through, my own network and, through some of the services that I provide, or some of, maybe some knowledge that I could, pass along to them on, a project that they're working on. And so
I
that's
love
something that's
that.
been really, really impactful recently for me.
I love that so much. And congratulations for doing that. That is awesome. That is great. I want to mention something you were talking about LinkedIn Lives. Part of what's been so fun about my LinkedIn journey is I have done numerous LinkedIn Live events, always with the job seeker as the audience, always in the context of, hey, job seekers, come on this call. It's an hour, and we're going to give you tips, tools, and motivation as you continue to embark on the job search. And I've been on numerous podcasts like yours, and I'm
Hmm.
so thrilled to be here today with you. Networking can help you sometimes even land those opportunities, right? So I was on
100%.
a LinkedIn Live event a couple months ago by someone in my network who introduced me to somebody else, and they said, I think you two should meet because you have a lot in common and I think you can really help each other. And then we decided to do a LinkedIn Live event together. I didn't know who this person was, but someone in our network, we shared a connection, and that connection ended up introducing the two of us together. And then we had an awesome event where we had like well over 1,000 people attend. And it was so much fun and it was so gratifying. And this was someone who I didn't know, but someone from my network did. So
Yeah,
that's
that's
the
so
other
cool.
reason why it's so cool. And
Yeah.
it's magical. And sometimes even that one connection, that one networking call, that one connection request could change your life. Like I said, when I reached out to the CEO and she got back to me, that changed my life. I had this new job that I was so happy at because I took the steps that I did in trying to obtain a position at my target companies.
Yeah, and I just think that it's so exciting that there are things that you can do that are within your control when it comes to job seeking. And this is definitely one of them. As you're growing and expanding your network, don't just let those people, sit in your network, because, what I found is it's really easy for somebody to get lost in your network, especially when you start to grow a bigger network. Be really proactive in reaching out to them. And you just, like you said, Melissa, you never know what opportunities might come from that. It could be life changing.
I completely agree. Networking is a magical thing. I understand not everyone's comfortable doing it, but it could certainly be life changing,
Yeah.
especially when you're looking for a job.
Yeah. So last question, and I have to ask this, as a yoga instructor, how do you think mindset and mental well-being play a role in a successful job search?
I'm so happy you asked me that. Thank you so much. Yes, so I am a big yogi. I teach a couple classes a week, and I've been practicing yoga for well over 20 years. What yoga does in part is it calms my mind. Like when I'm in that studio and I'm within the four corners of my mat, I forget about my day. And what I tell my students at the beginning of every class is for the next hour, focus on the four corners of your mat and what's inside of it, which is you. Forget about your to-do list, forget about your day. Yoga is very helpful with your mental health too, because it allows you to just be calmer and more peaceful. So to me, part of the reason I practice yoga is first, I'm definitely like a health, I'm very healthy and very active, like physically, but it's good for you mentally. And so part of the reason why I love teaching yoga is I'm able to help my students who have a lot going on in their lives. I mean, we all have a lot going on, right? But for that 1 hour when you're in that studio, clear your mind. And when you walk out of that studio after the hour, you're thinking better. You're putting your problems aside for that 1 hour and you're focusing on just peace. And I think especially in this chaotic world, we just had an election, a very interesting
Yeah.
election, and there's so many people looking for a job and the holidays are coming up. Like this is couldn't be a better time to practice mindfulness. It also has helped my mental health. I mean, in true transparency, my mental health has suffered on and off over the years for various reasons. Specifically, when I lost those 2 jobs, I felt like my world was turning upside down, especially after 18 years at that company. I felt like my world was in a tailspin, but I always came back to my yoga practice, and it always made me feel better.
I've started doing some just really basic meditating, and right
Yeah,
now it's only 5 minutes a day because
that's
at this
okay.
moment that's the only time that I can find. But it's been transformational, and
Yeah.
honestly, and I would imagine yoga is very similar in just bringing you back into yourself and into the present time.
Yes, and I teach yoga sculpt, which is weightlifting yoga. So it's a little bit of like the meditation, the calming effect,
Yes.
but then we use very heavy weights, so you're getting like you're sweating, like it's very physical.
Mm,
Like those are the best types of workouts, I think, because it's a combination of kind of calming you mentally, but revving you up physically. So by the time
yes.
you leave my class, you're like, I feel so much better.
I'm a huge weightlifter too, so I'm into it. I think I would
I
love
love
that.
that.
Well, awesome. Melissa, where can we find you on social media?
Yes. Right now, I'm predominantly just on LinkedIn. Melissa Grabiner. I'm the only one out there over the billion users on LinkedIn. I would love to connect with you. Feel free to reach out to me. Mary, thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. We had a really lively, insightful, and important discussion, and I really appreciate, being here.
Yes. Well, Melissa, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. I will be releasing episodes every Monday, so be sure to subscribe on the platform that you are watching this, give it a 5-star review, and we'll see you next time.